Have you ever felt like life quietly stopped fitting you? Like the rhythm of the world kept playing, but you were no longer in tune with its song? Maybe you've noticed the silence between things growing louder. The laughter that once felt warm now echoes. The goals you once chased now shimmer like mirages on a desert road. And somewhere deep within, something whispers, "This can't be all there is." It's a strange ache, one that doesn't point to any wound you can see, yet refuses to fade. You wake with a heaviness that has no name, a distance from the person you once were. The things that used to define you, success, approval, belonging, suddenly feel hollow, like costumes worn too long. You wonder if you're breaking down or breaking open. Carl Jung believed that moments like these aren't mistakes, they're signals, the soul's secret language. When the external world loses its meaning, it's not because you've lost your way, it's because your inner world is awakening. The collapse of what was is often the quiet announcement of what's coming, but few recognize it. Most turn back, mistaking transformation for failure, silence for emptiness, confusion for loss. Yet what if this disorientation, the sleepless nights, the sudden sensitivity, the unexplainable pull towards solitude isn't the end of your path, but the beginning of a deeper one? What if every piece falling apart is simply making space for the truth of who you are to rise? There comes a point when the soul stops whispering and begins to rearrange everything. You start to sense that something ancient, something unnameable, is calling you forward. It doesn't shout. It doesn't promise comfort. It only invites you to listen. And as the familiar begins to crumble, one question remains, one that changes everything once you dare to face it. What if the pain you're trying to escape is actually the sign that you're finally on the right path? There are seasons in life when everything seems to whisper the same hidden message, through dreams, through chance encounters, through the way your body suddenly tightens before something changes. You wake in the middle of the night with a strange pulse in your chest, not from fear, but from recognition. A feeling that something unseen is trying to reach you. Maybe it started subtly. The same numbers appearing over and over on clocks or receipts. A feather in a place it shouldn't be. A song that plays at the exact moment you need its words. You tell yourself it's coincidence, but deep down, you know it isn't. The more you try to ignore it, the more persistent it becomes, as if reality itself is folding inward, trying to show you something you've forgotten. You might feel exhausted for no clear reason, detached during conversations, disconnected from your own reflection, as though your eyes hold stories your mind hasn't caught up to yet. You may dream of faces you've never seen, hear your name called when no one is there, or feel waves of emotion that don't belong to any moment in your day. These aren't random, they are messages translated through your body, your senses, your intuition. Carl Jung called this the language of the soul. It speaks in symbols, not logic. It uses discomfort and longing as its alphabet. And when it begins to speak, it often disrupts everything that feels safe. The friendships that once grounded you begin to fade. The job that gave you purpose now drains you. Even the places you used to love begin to feel foreign, as if the air itself has changed texture. You start questioning yourself. Why can't I just be content? Why does everything feel off? But beneath the confusion, something else stirs. A quiet awareness that maybe what's happening isn't collapse, but translation. Your life is being rewritten in a language you haven't yet learned, so you pay attention to the flicker of intuition that tells you not to go somewhere. To the stranger's eyes that hold an inexplicable familiarity, to the moments of déjà vu that freeze you in your tracks. They feel small, but they're part of a larger pattern, one that threads your inner world to something vast and sacred. Still, it's not easy to trust it. The mind demands logic, but the soul deals in mystery. You wonder if you're imagining things, if the signs are simply the product of wishful thinking. And yet, every time you dismiss them, something else happens. A new sign, a deeper ache, a stronger pull. It's as though life refuses to let you drift back to sleep. Even your body becomes a messenger. The tightness in your chest before a hard truth, the shiver that runs through you when you hear something that resonates, the way your breath softens when you're near authenticity. These are not mere reactions. They are translations, your soul's way of speaking through flesh. You start to see patterns everywhere, cycles repeating, lessons returning with new faces. The universe speaks softly but precisely, and once you begin to notice, you can't unsee it. It feels as though some deeper intelligence is weaving through your days, guiding you toward a truth you once feared. But with awareness comes uncertainty. You begin to ask questions you never dared to ask before. Why do I feel so distant from the person I used to be? Why do I crave solitude when I once feared it? Why does my heart ache for something I cannot name? Maybe these are not symptoms to fix, but signs to follow. Maybe the emptiness isn't a void. It's space being made for what's next. And somewhere inside you, that quiet knowing begins to grow. A whisper that says the world you've known is only a fraction of what's real. That something within you has begun to awaken, and it won't let you return to sleep. You look at your hands, your reflection, your ordinary surroundings, and realize that nothing is ordinary anymore. Every detail hums with hidden meaning. Every silence feels alive. And then comes the question that won't let you go, the one that hovers at the edge of every sleepless night, every uncanny moment, every unexplainable pull of your heart. What if all these signs aren't happening to you, but for you? There is a secret hidden in plain sight, one that most people overlook because it disguises itself as discomfort. The first great sign that your soul is awakening is not light. It's disruption. Not harmony, but fracture. Jung called it enantiodromia, the ancient law of reversal. When something in your life becomes too one-sided, the soul will create its opposite to restore balance. It's not punishment, it's precision. You feel it as unease, confusion, the unraveling of plans that once made sense. Suddenly, what once fueled you now drains you. The people who once inspired you now feel foreign. Even the mirror becomes an unfamiliar landscape. This is not coincidence. It's the beginning of alignment. Your outer life begins to crack because your inner world is expanding, and the old container can no longer hold what you are becoming. In ancient wisdom, the process was called the sacred undoing. Mystics wrote of it as the dark night. Alchemists called it nigredo, the blackening, the phase before transformation. To the world, it looks like chaos. To the soul, it's chemistry. Everything false must be burned away so that the essence can emerge pure. Imagine a seed underground. In darkness, in silence, pressure builds until the shell breaks. If it could think like a human, it would call this moment destruction. But we know better. It's the only way life begins. The same law governs you. When the structures of your life start to dissolve, it's not evidence of failure, it's the first movement of truth. This is why Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The soul doesn't evolve through comfort, it evolves through contrast. The discomfort is the compass. Every time something falls away, a friendship, a desire, a version of yourself, it's the universe clearing the path for what's authentic. But here's the hidden meaning. The one few ever learn to trust. The pain is sacred communication. Each loss, each confusion, each sleepless night is a coded message. The soul doesn't use words, it speaks through symbols, emotions, and synchronicities. When your life begins to dismantle itself, what's really happening is an initiation. You are being called out of the shallow current of the ego and into the deep ocean of the self. The ancients knew this. The Egyptians spoke of the weighing of the heart, where the soul had to shed everything heavy before entering the next realm. The mystics of every age echoed the same truth. The light of consciousness is born through the fire of dissolution. That fire you feel burning away your old life is not chaos, it's creation. Think of every time something went wrong, only to lead you towards something truer. The job that ended and forced you to rediscover your passion. The heartbreak that stripped away illusions and made you capable of real love. The illness that slowed you down just long enough to hear your inner voice again. These were not detours, they were directions. Jung taught that the soul often sabotages what is no longer aligned. He said the psyche has its own natural intelligence. It conspires toward wholeness. When you feel like everything is falling apart, it's because your deeper self has taken the wheel. You can resist it, or you can surrender to its rhythm. The first is suffering, the second is awakening. You might ask, how can pain be divine? Because it interrupts illusion. It strips away the false light that blinded you. Pain is the soul's most honest mirror. It shows you where you've been living out of alignment with your truth. It demands presence, humility, and courage. And when you stop running from it, when you dare to look directly into its flame, you discover it isn't there to destroy you. It's there to refine you. Every sacred tradition knew this truth but wrapped it in metaphor so only the ready could understand. Jesus called it the narrow path. The Buddhists called it the breaking of attachment. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. They all spoke of the same event, the collision between who you think you are and who you truly are. That collision hurts, but it's also holy. It's the soul's rebellion against the smallness of the life you've outgrown. So when you find yourself in that space where nothing feels certain, when even your prayers sound like echoes, remember, this is not the absence of guidance. This is guidance. The silence after everything collapses is where the sacred voice finally becomes audible. The first great sign that you're on the right path is not peace, it's disruption, because disruption clears space for the sacred to move in. And if these words have stirred something in you, if you feel that subtle recognition in your chest, it's because this message was meant for you. You're not watching by accident. You've been led here. Before we continue, take a breath. Let that truth settle. And if you feel it resonating, support this circle of awakening. Like this video, subscribe, and become part of a growing community of souls walking the same unseen path. Because what comes next reveals why the breaking must happen before the becoming. I remember the night everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no lightning, no voice from the clouds. Just silence. I was sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by the very things I used to think defined me. Books I never opened anymore. Plans scribbled on sticky notes. The faint hum of a world that had lost its rhythm. There was no tragedy. No clear reason for the ache in my chest, yet it pulsed like a quiet alarm. It felt as though my life had shifted half a step out of alignment, and I couldn't find my way back. That night, I turned off every light and sat in the dark. I wanted to see what remained when the distractions disappeared. At first, there was only the noise inside my head, the unfinished tasks, the voices of people I'd tried to please, the echo of expectations I'd built my life around. But beneath all of it, under the static, I heard something else. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. It was more like a pulse, a subtle rhythm that didn't come from my heart, but from somewhere deeper. I didn't understand it then, but later I would. That rhythm was the soul knocking, quietly, patiently, asking to be heard again. In the days that followed, small things began to happen. I'd wake up before dawn with tears in my eyes for no reason. Strangers began to share stories that mirrored my own. A line from an old book would appear in my mind exactly when I needed it. It was as though reality had shifted from coincidence to conversation. I started keeping a journal, not to document my thoughts, but to track the signs. One morning, while walking to work, I passed a small tree growing through a crack in the sidewalk. I must have walked by it 100 times before, but that day I stopped. The tree wasn't supposed to be there. It had no space, no soil, no reason to exist. Yet there it stood, alive, stretching toward the light. Something in me broke open. I remember whispering, "If it can grow here, maybe I can too." That moment became a turning point. I began to notice how life had been trying to speak to me all along, through dreams I'd dismissed and instincts I'd silenced. There had been moments when I'd felt drawn to leave a place or end a relationship, but stayed out of fear. Now I realized those impulses weren't confusion, they were communication. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But no one tells you that this becoming begins with losing who you thought you were. For months, I wandered through that strange middle place, too far from my old life to return, too unsure of the new one to move forward. Some days I felt peace, others unbearable doubt. My reflection changed before my eyes, not in appearance, but in presence. There was someone else looking back at me now, someone quieter, steadier, older than my years. One evening I dreamed I was standing at the edge of a vast forest. The trees shimmered with light, but there was no path. A voice, soft, familiar, said, "Walk anyway." I remember stepping forward and feeling the ground beneath me form with each movement, as though the path was being created by my courage to move. When I woke, the message was clear. You won't see the way until you start walking. That dream became my guide. I left the job that no longer aligned with my spirit. I stopped chasing validation and started listening to intuition. I spent more time alone, but for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. Solitude turned into sanctuary. The silence that once terrified me became the language of peace. One day, someone asked me what had changed, why I seemed calmer, more present. I told them the truth. I stopped trying to fix my life and started listening to it. And maybe that's what this awakening really is. The moment you stop seeing your pain as an enemy and start treating it as a teacher. The soul doesn't use words. It uses symbols, patterns, and emotions. Every heartbreak, every delay, every ending, it all carries a hidden instruction. Listen deeper. If you're hearing this and something inside you resonates, if you felt that pull, that strange series of events that seems too precise to be random, it's because your soul is speaking too. And maybe this story, mine or yours, isn't about answers at all. Maybe it's about remembering how to listen. So tell me, what has life been whispering to you lately? Have you seen the signs, the strange coincidences, the dreams, the sensations you can't explain? Share them in the comments below. I read every message, and in the next videos, I'll be choosing some of your stories to share, because we're not walking this path alone. And as you write, remember this: the story of your awakening might already be happening. You just haven't realized yet that you're the one living it. The second great sign that you are on the right path is the pull toward stillness, that irresistible need to retreat, to pause, to step away from the noise of the world and listen again. It may come disguised as exhaustion, disinterest, or the sudden desire to be alone, but beneath it lies one of the most powerful stages of awakening, the sacred withdrawal. Carl Jung described it as the soul reclaiming its energy from the external world. When too much of our life has been spent in performance, chasing approval, seeking certainty, living in reaction, the psyche begins to pull its attention inward. What feels like isolation is actually integration. What looks like emptiness is your energy returning home. It's the moment when life slows down not to punish you, but to prepare you. You start to sense that you cannot move forward until you stop running. The conversations you once tolerated now drain you. The endless scrolling, the distractions, the need to prove yourself, they begin to lose their grip. You crave quiet, not because you're weak or tired, but because your soul has grown hungry for truth. This is the sign most people misread. They confuse it with depression, with burnout, with losing their spark. But this stillness is not absence, it's alignment, the divine silence that descends before revelation. It's the same silence the mystics sought in caves, the prophets found in deserts, the poets met in sleepless nights. Because in that silence, the true voice of the self can finally be heard. The soul knows it cannot speak in chaos. It waits until everything external collapses into quiet, and that's when the second secret reveals itself. Guidance doesn't come from outside. It rises from within. You begin to feel it as intuition, those sudden knowings that have no logical explanation, yet carry a strange certainty. It can come as a thought that appears out of nowhere, a feeling that pushes you to change direction, or an image that repeats in your dreams. Jung called this the symbolic function of the psyche, the way your unconscious communicates through metaphors, sensations, and coincidences. Learning to recognize this guidance requires practice, not in listening harder, but in listening differently. Here's a simple technique that can help you tune into it: the stillness practice. Find a quiet space where you can be alone for at least 10 minutes. No music, no phone, no expectations. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and take 3 deep breaths. Ask a simple question, not with your mind, but with your heart. Something real. For example, what am I being shown right now? Or what part of me is asking for change? Don't try to answer. Just notice what arises. It may come as a word, an image, a memory, or a sensation in your body. Trust the first thing that appears, even if it doesn't make sense. Write it down immediately. The message is often subtle, like smoke. It vanishes if not captured. Over time, you'll notice patterns, repeated symbols, feelings, or themes. These are the soul's language becoming clearer. At first, it might feel like nothing happens. You may sit in silence and feel only restlessness, but if you return each day, you'll begin to sense the difference between the mind's noise and the soul's whisper. The mind demands, the soul invites. The mind argues, the soul simply knows. Once, during one of these moments of stillness, I received an image of a river. I didn't understand it then, but days later life presented a decision that mirrored it perfectly. I could either resist the current or surrender to its flow. That image became my compass. And every time I trust the guidance that rises from silence, life seems to move with more coherence, as if unseen hands are aligning what I cannot yet comprehend. This is why stillness is sacred. It reconnects you to the invisible rhythm that has always guided you. When you listen deeply, the path reveals itself step by step. You no longer chase signs, you become one. So if you find yourself craving solitude, don't rush back into noise. Sit with it. There's something waiting for you in the silence, a message that cannot be heard in the chaos of the world. You are being tuned, refined, prepared for what's next. And when you learn to trust that inner current, even small synchronicities begin to shimmer with purpose. You start meeting the right people at the right time. The book you need falls into your hands. The timing of life becomes almost poetic. These are confirmations, proof that you've entered the flow of your soul's path. Remember, the universe doesn't shout, it harmonizes. When you slow down enough to match its tempo, everything begins to make sense. This is the second great sign, the pull towards stillness, the sacred withdrawal. Not a retreat from life, but a return to yourself. Take this moment now. Pause the noise, breathe deeply, and ask within, what is my soul trying to tell me today? Then listen. The answer may not come in words, but it will come. And if these truths have resonated with you, if you felt that spark of recognition deep inside, support this space by liking the video and subscribing. Join this community of souls who are remembering how to listen, how to live guided by something greater than the noise. Because there is one more sign, a deeper, almost hidden signal that only a few ever discover. It's the one that doesn't just change your direction, it transforms your entire destiny. There is a moment on every spiritual path when silence itself begins to speak. It's not a voice, not a sound, but a knowing that vibrates through your entire being, a realization that the one you've been searching for has been watching through your eyes the whole time. This is the third and deepest sign, the awakening of unity. It's the moment you realize that you were never walking toward the divine, you were walking within it. Every ache, every loss, every longing was the language of God echoing through your human form, guiding you back to the place you never truly left. Carl Jung hinted at this when he wrote that the self is not only the center of the psyche, it is the image of God within the soul. The old mystics said the same thing in different tongues. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And yet, for most of life, we live as if God is somewhere far away, an external light we must earn. Only when the world collapses, only when we fall into stillness and surrender, do we see the truth. The light was inside us all along. You begin to notice it in the smallest things. The way sunlight touches a leaf, and suddenly you feel tears welling up, not from sadness, but from recognition. You feel it in the timing of life, in how certain people appear just as your heart calls for them, in how nature seems to mirror your inner weather. Reality itself becomes a conversation between you and the infinite. This is not philosophy, it's physics of the spirit. The quantum field that scientists describe as the unified energy of all things is what the ancients called logos, the living word. Everything is connected, and consciousness, your consciousness, is the thread that binds it. When you understand this, prayer stops being a request and becomes resonance. You no longer beg the universe to listen, you become the frequency that it responds to. This is why miracles begin quietly. You shift from asking, "Why me?" to whispering, "Thank you." You stop fighting the current and begin to float, and then life starts moving differently. Opportunities appear as if from nowhere, people sense your peace, and your presence begins to calm even the storms of others. It's not that you've escaped the world, it's that you finally understand your role within it. You are not separate from the sacred, you are its expression. But this realization doesn't come as fireworks or revelation. It arrives like dawn, slow, inevitable, and irreversible. You wake up one morning and everything, even your pain, glows with a faint light. You understand that love was never something to find, but something that had been breathing you all along. The soul no longer begs for meaning because it has become meaning itself. And yet there's a paradox. The closer you get to the truth, the more humility it demands. Awakening is not a crown, it's a surrender. It strips away the last illusion, the idea of a separate you. The ego trembles here because it senses its end. It's like standing on the edge of a great ocean, realizing that to truly belong, you must dissolve. In this sacred dissolution, you feel everything, the joy, the sorrow, the enormity of existence itself. You realize that every face you've ever loved, every stranger you've ever passed, every moment you thought was random, all of it was the same consciousness wearing different masks, and behind each mask there was only one gaze, the gaze of the divine looking back at itself. That is the hidden sign almost no one recognizes, the return to oneness, when you see God not as above, but within. When you feel the world not as something happening to you, but through you. When forgiveness flows naturally, because you finally understand nothing was ever truly separate. It's here that fear dies, not because the world becomes safe, but because you are no longer afraid of its mystery. The unknown becomes sacred, the silence becomes music, death itself transforms into a doorway, not an ending. You understand now what the saints meant when they said, "To die before you die is to live eternally." And if these words are resonating deep in your chest, If you feel a warmth, a recognition, a subtle trembling, it's because your soul already knows this truth. You didn't stumble upon this message. You were guided here. This space, this channel, exists to remind you of what the world made you forget. If this moment has touched something sacred inside you, support this work. Not because it earns anything, but because it helps this flame keep burning. This channel doesn't live on profit. It lives on purpose, on passion, on people like you who feel the same call. Like this video, subscribe and join this community of awakening souls. Each new voice strengthens the current, because the truth you're about to uncover next is not just about awakening. It's about what happens after, when the awakened soul begins to walk back into the world, carrying light in human form. And that is where the real miracle begins. There comes a moment when the journey stops feeling like a search and begins to feel like a homecoming. You realize that everything that happened, the pain, the confusion, the silence, the strange signs that appeared like whispers in the dark, was never meant to break you. It was meant to wake you. Every sign you've seen, every emotion that felt like too much to carry, every loss that forced you to rebuild from nothing, all of it was a conversation between your soul and the divine. You weren't being punished. You were being shaped. You weren't losing direction. You were being redirected. The detours were never detours. They were sacred choreography. Carl Jung once wrote that your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. And now, after all the unraveling and rediscovering, you can finally see what he meant. The real guidance doesn't come from the stars or books or any teacher. It comes from within, from the still, luminous center that's been waiting patiently behind your fear. You are not the same person who began this journey. Somewhere along the way, something inside you softened. You started noticing the quiet beauty in ordinary things. The way the morning light hits the window, the peace that hides between heartbeats, the meaning in moments that once seemed random. This is how awakening happens, not in thunder or revelation, but in tenderness. Those who walk this path often feel alone, but the truth is, we are all walking each other home. Every time you listen to your intuition instead of your fear, every time you choose compassion over judgment, every time you pause to breathe and simply be, you are helping to raise the light in this world. That is your mission, not to be perfect, not to have all the answers, but to remain open, to keep listening, to let your life become a vessel for the sacred. And maybe that's what all these signs were about from the beginning. A call to remember that your soul is not separate from the universe. It is the universe, expressing itself through a human story. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are exactly where the light needed you to be. Even now, as you sit here, something inside you is expanding, an awareness that cannot be unlearned. You are becoming a bridge between heaven and earth, spirit and form, infinite and temporary. That's what it means to walk the right path, to carry the divine not in words, but in presence, to live as proof that awakening is possible. And perhaps that's the quiet miracle, that the same force that turns galaxies in the sky also beats gently inside your chest. You were never disconnected, only distracted, and now your awareness has returned to where it has always belonged, home. If this message spoke to you, if you felt something stir inside, something that reminded you of who you truly are, I want to invite you to be part of this growing circle of light. Like this video, subscribe and become part of this community. A space built not for profit, but from passion, from faith, and from the desire to keep truth alive in a world that's forgotten how to listen. And before you go, I'd love to know who you are. The soul behind the screen. Leave a comment below with your name and city so I can send a warm blessing to you in the next video. I read every single message because this isn't just a channel. It's a gathering of souls remembering together. So take a deep breath, Feel that light inside you, quiet, eternal, unbreakable. It's always been there, waiting for you to notice. Because awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering what has always been true. And maybe, just maybe, the signs that led you here were never random at all.